I can't remember what I had for lunch today, or most days, but the day that Meredith was diagnosed with diabetes, I remember pretty clearly. I had a strong clue that she was diabetic. Meredith was just 6. She was just out of kindergarten. The night before we went to the hospital, I remember I slept next to Meredith and I prayed and I cried and I wanted to wake up in the morning and I wanted to be diabetic and I wanted her to not be. And most prayers you just ask and don't expect to receive, but I wanted it, and I wanted it snappy. I wanted an answer and I wanted it my way, and it just wasn't meant to be. Our 2 oldest girls, who were in 4th and 5th grade at the time, Leslie and Abby, would take turns every week, every other week, and they would go down to 1st grade and test Meredith because she's left-handed and she didn't have quite the dexterity to test herself at the time. And you know, one day I know that the school was really insistent that Meredith should absolutely keep having juice because she was low, and my daughter Abby in 5th grade just absolutely insisted that they were wrong, that she needed protein, that her blood sugars would come up only with her lunch. And she finally convinced them and insisted that they give Meredith her lunch or get her lunch. But I think that really helped Meredith see that she would have to step up for herself too. To this day, nobody argues with Abby, but, right? But it was nice to have an older brother. To come home and have her sitting on his lap because she was so low, and managing things was, 1, a wonderful thing for our family, but 2, it was a scary way to have a child. So that is the hardest part, I think. We were able to accommodate things as time went on, but you know, even when she was 8 or 9, I would sit there and think, oh my goodness, she will never have the easy pregnancies that I had. You know, she will have to have everything monitored, everything will have to be high risk and taken care of. And a couple of years ago, if you were here, you will recall that my now son-in-law proposed to Meredith at this gala. And I knew that when he called me and asked for my permission, we talked for a little bit, and I said, you know, you may be facing some very difficult times in the future. And he said, I'm well aware of that, but it doesn't matter, I love your daughter. And that's sort of the answer to every mother's prayer, is to have someone who is willing to take on a spouse that has a chronic illness and sees it as just a part of that person, not something extra that has to be a burden, but can be loved. And I knew that Jake was sort of special to Meredith, I think, long before she did. Because my husband passed away 13 years ago, Meredith's brother Jim gave her away at the wedding. And as he handed her off, he said, kind of sternly, but kind of sweetly, take care of her. And that's something that people who have children who are diabetic have to do all the time. You have to always be thinking, what do they need next? What could they need? And you have to anticipate, and your only hope is that you have trained them and taught them so that they will anticipate and not be in a bad situation sometime where there isn't anybody to help. But Meredith has done a tremendous amount. She was an athlete. She was recruited by the University of Iowa, and I couldn't be prouder.
I was thinking about this today, and I thought, you know, I never thought of being diabetic as a huge burden because it's all I've known. But now I look back and, yeah, I definitely am like, it's unfair that I had to deal with the burden of being diabetic every day at volleyball practice for 10 years, and you know, that I couldn't have one day, my wedding day, where I wasn't worried about whether or not I was going to get low at the altar. You know, having my husband now husband put my test kit and glucose tabs in his suit jacket beforehand. So I wish those things were different, and I want to cure so that those things are different for the children who are 2, 3, and 4 years old now.
My heart breaks whenever I hear about another child being diagnosed.
I also think that lots of people don't see the perspective that the diabetic has on the everyday, day-to-day activities. I was afraid. There was a part of me that got very afraid to walk across campus if I didn't know exactly where my blood sugar was, because I was on at a school where there were, at any given time, 30,000 people walking around, and what if I collapsed and started to have a seizure because of a low blood sugar or something? Who was going to be there? That was my real first glimpse of, this is diabetes and this is what I'm going to have to figure out in order to survive with it. And there was also a very appealing chance to be in a research study that was funded by JDRF at the University of Iowa Hospitals. I found out that I would be enrolled in the study for the continuous glucose monitor and the artificial pancreas project. Had gotten accepted to the study and got the job at JDRF. And
you got the husband.
I got the husband. And so I decided to stay in Iowa, and I hadn't met that many other diabetics throughout the years, but after seeing all the kids that are growing up with the same thing that I grew up with, it reinforces the importance of what we're doing here. Because while I know exactly what they're going through and doing my best to make it easier on them with studies like the Artificial Pancreas Project, I know that there's still a lot of work to be done, because it's not a carefree life that it should be like it is for a lot of other kids. So after listening to my mom talk about what it was like to raise a child with diabetes, it makes me pause a bit more than the average person, thinking about whether or not I wanted to take the risk of, the 9 months, critical months of being pregnant with a child, and then whether or not I really want to, put somebody on this earth who may be diagnosed with the same disease someday. I know that it's tough, and I don't know if I would produce, just as healthy a child, and so, it's unfair, and I hate that part of it. That's one of the reasons that I wouldn't have that opportunity, but because I don't want anyone else to have to live with diabetes every day.
When it comes to research, I think one of the critical things to always remember is that even though we go about our daily jobs day after day, there are people for whom the cure for diabetes is their daily job. It has sort of warmed my heart to know that there are other people who want her to be cured as much as I do.